Hey, JD here. Welcome to the Mead House. You know, over the past several years, we've brought you over 150 episodes of mead making education, information, and entertainment. More than 100 guests have stopped by the Mead House, professional mead makers, medal-winning home mead makers, competition organizers, experts on yeast and honey, and brewers just like you and me have all visited to share their knowledge. Hey, the Mead House is produced for home mead makers and brewers looking for a bit of inspiration and information from the many guests and discussions we have here at the house. You can help support the Mead House by joining the Mead House Keyholder Club on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com and search for the Mead House. There's also a link in the show notes. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a keyholder. We've teamed up with some great companies to provide thank you gifts for your support. So get on over to Patreon, join the Mead House Keyholder Club, and get your own set of keys to the Mead House. You can listen to the Mead House podcast with your favorite player, and be sure to rate us 5 stars on iTunes or your favorite listening venue. The Mead House, mead making entertainment you just don't want to miss.
Hey, welcome to the Mead House, and thanks for listening to episode 201. I'm Jeff. With me tonight is my co-host Ryan. JD's still on the road, making that long trek across the country, but I'm pretty sure we'll be hearing from him again soon. By then, we might even have a few of these things crossed off this chore list he left behind. Hey, you're listening to the Mead House podcast, and we are absolutely everywhere. iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, now even Amazon Music. You can find all those and more right on our homepage, www.meadhouse.com, or just search for the Mead House in your favorite podcast platform. In this episode, joined by Charles Minsky from Island Hunt Wine Company to talk about beekeeping, farming, and meat producing out on Prince Edward Island in Canada. We're going to talk about the meat he's making with locally sourced ingredients. I'm really curious to hear more about this mead mobile operation he's got going too. In segment 2, I got to do a presentation for a local beekeeping organization Saturday last regarding getting started on mead making for beekeepers, and provided a pretty approachable recipe for some easy drinking hydromels. And I gave around a half a dozen suggestions for things they could do to take that recipe a little bit further. I figured, let's talk about some fun things we can go even further, a little bit more off the wall with, as far as our summer and our fall hydromels. So that'll be segment 2. And in segment 3, as usual, we're going to the social club, where we answer questions from homebrewers like you with no formal expertise, just our own experience. All that tonight and more at the Mead House. But first, a big thank you to our Mead House keyholders who help keep the Mead House podcast free. You too can become a Mead House keyholder and help to support the show for as little as $2 a month. We have great thank you gifts to send you, not to mention some keyholder only content. So get on over to patreon.com, search for the Mead House, or click the link in the show notes and do your part to keep the show on the air. What are we drinking tonight? I am going to start this one off, and I have 2 drinks in front of me, very contrasty this evening. A couple weeks ago, we were talking about how a ton of the microbreweries are finally getting into the craft lager situation, and I happened to pick up a lager from Free State, which is it's a local microbrewery over where I went to college. And it is super light, crisp. The hop character it's pretty light, but it's got a good bitterness to it. It balances the light maltiness there. So very approachable, very drinkable. This is a nice little lager. In my other glass, I was playing cabinet roulette again and pulled out another unlabeled brown bottle. This one had a white cap, and poured it out. This looks opaquely brown-black, very little carbonation to it. Smells very, almost like a coffee and a honey and molassesy character to it. And tasting this, yep, this is actually the first braggot I ever made. I used a porter recipe kit from my local homebrew store. I added, I think, about 10 pounds of Bochet honey, and came out real nice. The hop flavor has long faded on this one. Still got a lot of the roasty notes to it, and the honey is coming through strong as all get out, probably because I used 10 pounds of it. And hit the alcohol tolerance of the yeast and then some. Yeah, no, these drinks couldn't be more different from each other, but they are both very good. Ryan, what are you drinking tonight?
All right, so I guess mine's kind of a story here, but I'll give an update. First of all, the infamous over overcarbonated batch that I had made. So the idea was going to open those bottles up, and put them in a fermenter, with some of those cherries, and see if I could do that. Well, unfortunately, they did continue to ferment. I mean, I told you when I first started trying them out, it was like a champagne bottle. Well, it got even worse. I opened it up and a few of the bottles had broken. Now, I had bottled most of these in heavy Belgian beer bottles. So you know what I'm talking about. They're really heavy glass, right? And they were bombing those. So it was it was pretty bad, right? I mean, we were talking pretty bad. So I tried opening a couple up, and they were blowing the rings off. So if you look at a bottle that's got the little lip on it, where you can put that on. It was when I'd open it, it would blow that little lip off, and I did that 2 or 3 times, and I said, no, this is just a lost cause. It's making a lot of mess. It's dangerous. Somebody's gonna get hurt, and me, and so I ended up just dropping those 2 cases in the dumpster, and having to walk away. And I'll tell you, for those of you who listen to the show and know me a little bit, that is a big step for me, I suppose, in that, I was able to actually not try to save one. If you go back and listen to a couple of years ago on the show, I talked about how I took a 1 gallon batch that wasn't right, and by the time it was right, it had got up to 6 gallons because I kept having to add to fix it. But I got it there. I got it just fantastic. I just took 6, had to add, it had to grow in size to 6 gallons. Okay, so then I had this empty fermenter, and I said, okay, well, what am I going to do? So I put a batch together. I threw a batch together of something I wanted to do. And we won't talk about that tonight. We'll talk about it another night, but something I wanted to do. And then I left and I went fishing. And so I went to the cabin. And that means that, cabin's in Wisconsin. And you guys know, when I go to Wisconsin, I usually buy some New Glarus beer, some Wisconsin only beer. And I stopped at the general store, bait shop, grocery store, ice cream fountain, the whole thing. And they saw some of the beer they had, and it is part of their thumbprint series. So their thumbprint series, they say that it's always a limited edition, and they make no promises, and if they're ever going to brew it again. I think some of these they generally do brew, I think, a few more times, but the whole point is that it's could be a one-off, and even if they do it again, it might not be the exact same. So anyway, the one I tried, the one I had my first time having it, is called their well, I'll just read what they say with the thumbprint series. It's always flattering when less imaginative competitors copy our beer's packaging and or marketing. I usually accept this as a personal challenge to do something more. When we trademarked Solstice name, when our trademarked Solstice name was infringed upon, I regrouped with Dancing Man. When lots of deconstructed 4 and 6 packs show up, I knew I was doing a good job. Let's see. Sorry, trying to find the part. Thumbprint beers. Oh, anyway, just it doesn't really matter. Just it's this thing. So I tried the triple. It's called 555, and it is a Belgian. It's a Belgian triple, and it says 555 celebrates the divine confluence of 5 unique grains: barley, white wheat, oats, brown rice, and heirloom Midwestern corn, each lend attributes that collectively create greatness. A strong 9% ABV originated at 20 degrees Plato. This Belgian style triple celebrates its golden blonde heritage by retaining that luscious natural hue. Double decoction and experimental organic hops elevate the spicy notes, balancing fruity caramel tones. The addition of Belgian candy sugar is the traditional bottle fermentation method. Strength and unity reflected here. So 9% Belgian triple. It's sneaky 9%. Like, you're drinking this, it's super sneaky. You wouldn't think it. Great body on it for a Belgian triple, and super fruity. Just tons of fruity esters. Just unbelievable. Okay, so catch a bunch of fish, have a great time, come back home. I check the fermenter. This is just a day and a half or so later, and it's now like a gallon lower than it was when I started, and the towel on the floor by it just drenched. And I'm like, oh my gosh, oh no. So I use these plastic fermenters, right? And I've had them cracked before. And so I take out a glass carboy, quick sanitize it, rack everything into it. And then I realized that, so I use what's called the siphonless, so there's a spigot on the bottom of it, and then I don't have to siphon when I rack. Just put a hose on it and go, into the bottling bucket. And I was all worried this thing was cracked, and I rinsed it out and everything else, and I realized the nut on the spigot was just loose.
Oh.
So put a gallon of that was basically must, onto the floor. And again, you're talking last week, Jeff. That's why the floor drain. You got a floor drain. Just take a hose or a bucket of water and rinse the floor off right there and into the floor drain, and you're good to go. So very, very interesting stuff there. And yeah, so that's what I'm drinking tonight, Jeff. I don't like doing this usually, but I'm going to take a sip here before I bring our guest in, just because I need to wet my whistle. Yeah, that's spicy, fruity, just a magnificent Belgian triple. Okay, joining us tonight, as Jeff mentioned, is the Canadian. It's coming from the north side of the border. Mead maker, farmer, and beekeeper Charles Lipnicki. I'm sorry, Charles. I'll ask you in a minute if I'm butchering the name. He and his wife Laura own and operate the Island Honey Wine Company in Canada's smallest province, Prince Edward Island. I've never been there. I know that it just looks gorgeous. I think my wife went there with her mom and sister on a girls' vacation when she was very young, and if that, I'm almost certain that's where it was, and it just sounds gorgeous. I might have to get up there at some point. In past lives, Charles has been a pastry chef, entrepreneur, and salesman. Pastry chef. Wonder if he's got. I typically sometimes I don't read these ahead of time. Pastry chef. So, the pastry stouts are all. I don't know if they're the rage anymore. I know they were. I don't know if there's going to be like a pistachio chocolate cake, stout mead coming. His longtime hobbies include being an avid home brewer, wine and mead maker. Charles and Laura always longed for a simpler lifestyle and had a desire to create a life for themselves on a small farm. They found the island first as tourists and secured a 56-acre farm. I thought everything up there was in metrics. Is that what's the metric equivalent to an acre? Is it still an acre? Farm for a village known as Wheatley River, and moved to the island in 2012. They had little experience as farmers, but made up for that with a passion to learn. Think of the old series Green Acres. Green Acres was that was the funny show. I remember watching that, reruns of that on Jeff, help me out here. Was that Nick at Night? Yeah. That was a funny show. What was that? The funny the guy, the city guy wants to wears his suit when he's where was that he wears a suit when he's out there. So
God, it's been decades, but that seems right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then let's see here. Now I'm getting carried away. After learning about a new to North America fruit called the Haskap berry, they knew the farm would have to include this incredible gem as an anchor crop. I don't know if I'm familiar with that one. After many trials and errors, the farm started to mold itself into a substantial business that relies heavily on animals, bees, fruit, and flowers to create one-of-a-kind award-winning meads. They opened the Island Honey Wine Company business in 2017, where they offer seasonal mead tasting in their farm store, and visitors have the opportunity to experience mead right where the ingredients are grown in the world's first Meadmobile. Guests can purchase meads on their site, in island liquor stores, or order our meads online. So that's where I think. So the reason my wife was on Prince Edward Island, I think that's where they do the. Is that the Anne of Green Gables? Whole series I think was set there. I think if I'm remembering right, maybe I'm off. I don't remember. My wife read those books and movies and now reads them to my daughter. But I'm pretty sure that's why it sticks out. So Jeff, we've got the island here, Prince Edward Island, in above Maine, you got to go northeast of Maine to get there. If you kind of picture the country. And then we've got our other friends, our other island mead making friends in Kauai. So in Hawaii, so we might have to do, we've kind of got, we should, JD's on this big cross country trek, right? But we might have to do the island to island, right? Have to go to Kauai and visit our mead making friends there, and then go to Prince Edward Island and visit our friends there. That's probably only like a 14-hour flight.
I mean, sure, write those off on a business expense, right?
Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, help keep the mead house free. So, all right. Well, enough of that shenanigans. Welcome to the show, Charles. And what is in your cup tonight?
Well, thank you, Ryan and Jeff. Well, it's a little later here than it is there, so I just had to have one cup going tonight. And because I've been hearing about Jeff's move and finding lost bottles of mead and things like that, I went down in my cellar and did a little rooting around, and I came up with a fortified sizer. And it was a sizer that we doctored it up a little bit with some rum and some cinnamon. And it's quite nice. It's got a beautiful, kind of a nice buttery amber color. It's got a nice mouthfeel. It really likes the glass, and the nose on this it's caramely, it's buttery, it's just delicious. So it's one of those that it would sneak up on you, kind of like your Wisconsin beer there.
Yeah,
and
sounds like it.
Yeah. So, but it's just one of those one-offs, those experiments, and I mean, that's what we all love doing, right?
Absolutely. So Charles, before I reading in your bio, the Haskap berry, and before we get too far, and I know I'm going to forget about it. What is a Haskap berry, and what kind of a mead do you make out of it?
Well, Haskap berry looks kind of like a high bush blueberry shaped a bit like an egg. And, it's a different looking fruit. And I think in the States, I've heard Americans refer to it as the honeyberry. And I know they're growing this in Oregon. But it's been a fruit, it's fairly new in North America, but it's been grown for hundreds and hundreds of years in the northernmost island of Hokkaido, Japan. And this is one of those places where people live a really long and healthy life. And the name Haskap, or if you're Japanese from Hokkaido, you would say Haskapu. It means longevity and good vision. They didn't know it then, but now it turns out it's one of the highest antioxidants that we can consume. And it's very, very healthy for us. Lots of wonderful goodness in it. And this is what kind of got me excited about it, because I thought, wow, why haven't I heard about this before? Why haven't I seen this in a store? This fruit grows well in northern climates. You cannot grow this if you do not have snow. That's a prerequisite. And this island in Japan is the exact same latitude as Prince Edward Island. And their climate is actually a little bit more severe, which is kind of counterintuitive to how I always thought of Japan. But anyway, it grows well here. If I can't kill it, anybody can grow it. It's pretty hardy. And so we started planting this, and now we've amassed quite a number of Haskap plants, and they're a big part of our farm. And what we do is, after we harvest the Haskap, we create a melomel with that. So we're taking our honey and our fruits and we're putting them together, and we're having this beautiful Haskap melomel.
Excellent. Yeah, Jeff, who is that makes the honeyberry that we've had? Is that Sap House?
Yeah.
Interesting. So I've tasted it. I have tasted it before, and it's delicious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you were to put a raspberry, a blackcurrant, and a blueberry in your mouth at the same time, that's a Haskap.
Excellent. So you were a home, kind of did it all. It sounds like you brewed beer, made wine, did mead, probably made some ciders. Yeah. So, and then you decided to open a meadery. What was that? What was that process like, making that decision?
Well, it actually, when we came to the island and we started this farm, it really wasn't on the radar to start a meadery. Mead kind of came about because when we planted the Haskap, we needed to have some good pollination. So of course, let's get some bees. and then it just we were learning about some different. We were at a fruit growers conference actually in the States, and learning how cider is taking off. And at that time, cider was not that common, and it was just starting its growth curve. And like in Canada here, I know it's the fastest growing sector of the alcohol market is cider, but the second fastest is mead. And it was just like, wow, this is kind of a neat opportunity. We could take our honey, we could take our fruit, and we could put those two things together, and we could make some pretty good product and be a neat business model, because we're a small farm. And that was kind of a goal. Like, what can we do with a small farm? Because more and more farms are just going very large and industrial. And lots of people would probably like to have that lifestyle on a farm. And they might get discouraged if they think you have to have 1,000 acres and $1 million in equipment and all this stuff. But we thought if we could make a go of this, then that would be fantastic, and then other people could do the same. So that sort of inspired us to put this together, and that was the piece of the puzzle that fit together, and that's what we did.
Excellent. Now, and you had been making your stuff at home, and so making mead, as a home mead maker before you opened up the meadery. Yeah. What were some of the, and I know a lot of, we have folks who listen to this show who run the spectrum from home mead makers, of all experience levels, to pros, and some who are kind of thinking about making that transition or entertaining it. I'm not. I'll tell you right now. For me, here's my theory, and this isn't just with mead making and brewing and wine making, all that stuff, but it's with anything. I mean, I'd say this with golfing and fishing and all my hobbies. I wouldn't want to be, I'll stick with brewing. I don't want to be a pro brewer or mead maker or vintner or any of that stuff. And the reason why is because then it becomes a job. And then once it's a job, it's I don't think of it. I wouldn't be able to think of it as something that I can just do for fun anymore, because now it's something that your livelihood depends on. And so. Sorry, that now I'm going on a tangent, but that's if someone ever to say, hey, why wouldn't you want to do it? That's why. But I know a lot of people who really enjoy it. Okay, so I had a question somewhere in there. Sometimes I just start talking, and without JD here to reel me back in, it just spins out of control. Okay, here was the question now. What did you experience were some of the big, maybe unexpected things when you when you went from a small scale, maybe a smaller scale home mead maker to making some commercial batches?
Well, I was pretty intimidated about it because, when you're in the hobbyist world, 5-gallon carboy is pretty standard, but then you can't really do that when you're going commercial, and it was intimidating, just all the equipment and the scale of everything. And I started making these drawings, and I thought at first maybe I could do this in my basement, and how could I make this work? How is this all going to fit together? And I started making drawings, and then kind of realized that now you kind of do it, like you have to make something of a certain scale if you're going to make a livelihood out of it, because it's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes into any enterprise. But with, like in our situation, we had to first of all grow the raw ingredients. That was a big step, because we weren't farmers. That was like we were just totally had this romantic notion that put the plant in the ground and nature will provide us with an abundance of fruit, and it doesn't work like that. It's a lot of work, and then there's the buildings you need, and all the tankage and filters and pumps and bottlers and labelers, and man, like I actually, it was very overwhelming, and we didn't do everything right, and there's things you'd do differently in hindsight, of course, but we're not afraid to make mistakes as long as you learn from them.
Excellent.
I was thinking about your exploding bottles when I was remembering stuff, because I've had that too. You know, when you go to get a bottle and you think, should I put on oven mitts before I try and open this?
Jeez.
Or have a riot shield or something. But yeah, and I mean, if you mess up on a big scale, you really mess up. That's another thing. And like you had that conundrum. What am I going to do with all this bubbly brew that I've made here? And yeah, what do you do with it? You know.
Absolutely. Jeff, I want to bring you in here before we get too far down the track.
Yeah. So, you know, Charles, I've been looking at your website here, and I saw the photos of this mead mobile. And just to describe what I'm seeing to our audience at home, it looks like you've got a pretty substantial trailer with like probably benches on both sides, a cover, being hauled around by a tractor. And I gather from what I'm seeing on the website here, this is, you know, you're touring the farm and getting to taste meats while you do it, right?
That's exactly it. You're getting to drink what you're seeing while you see what you're drinking.
That's a very fun idea. Where did that all come about for you guys?
COVID. When COVID came to town, we were kind of like, oh no, like our business relies on tourism and tasting room sales. Like we do sell in liquor stores, and we didn't really have much of an online presence at that time, and we weren't even sure if we'd be able to open our tasting room because of the spacing requirements, the social distancing and all that. But then we learned that if you're outdoors, it's safer. And we thought, well, I've always wanted to do tastings in the field, but we never thought of taking people around on a wagon. We thought, well, maybe it'd be neat to have a little pavilion in the Haskap orchard, and let's go there and drink Haskap, and then we'll wander over to the lavender patch and have some lavender mead over there. So we ended up, all the seats in the mead mobile, all the benches on there are 6 feet long. So you can, based on your bubble or like the people you're with, your family unit or your friends, you can kind of distribute yourself according to your comfort level and get to go around. And I mean, that was a big thing that helped kind of save our bacon last year, because we had no visitors from Quebec, Ontario, United States. And I mean, those are three very big contributors to the tourism on Prince Edward Island. And cruise ships weren't coming in. So, I mean, you had 96 cruise ships that normally come in every year. That's a lot of people. And we do bus tours and stuff like that. And so this was a way to get people here to have a safe environment where we could share the story of mead and the story of the honeybee. And it's neat when you can actually go out into a Haskap orchard and you're drinking this melomel and you're seeing the flowers where the bees are, and we're talking about it. And it's just a one-of-a-kind experience. It'd be like, I mean, I think they do that in California at the grapes, don't they? You can go to the vineyard. Yeah. But with mead, we have 5 different kinds of mead, and they're all unique, and everything comes right from here. So it's very, very terroir. It's very special, and honey is special. Like that's so indicative of the flora and fauna of a region, an area, a climate. And that to me is the real magic ingredient in mead, is that it's uniqueness, and it's so special in that way.
You talked a little bit about your, the flora that the bees are visiting when they're making your honey. Is that now? Are they? I'm trying to figure out how to word this, but do you? I suppose it's all multifloral from what from your fields and your crops and things like that. Is that now? Do you try to influence the honey you're getting by where you're placing the hives or what you're planting, and do you think about that?
Absolutely. Every year we like to add something to benefit the bees. So this year it was we planted 100 sugar maples. We have a nursery where we're growing next year's planting of chestnut trees. Chestnuts have beautiful flowers in June. Lupins, we planted lupins. We plant wild roses. In PEI, Prince Edward Island, you have hedgerows that divide up the fields, and the fields are about 5 acres. And all of these hedgerows, you have an opportunity to put in plants that produce flowers, pollen, nectar, trees. And if everything you plant in that hedgerow is something that benefits the bee and gives flowers at different times of the season, then your honey becomes more complex. When we do tastings in our tasting room, and when we're doing tastings, one of my favorite things to introduce new people, new mead tasters, is our wildflower mead, because every sip that you take from that wildflower mead, you savor that sip, and then you find something different. And I don't know the difference between an apple blossom and a cherry blossom, or, all the things that are going on. But even Laura and I, we can still sit out on a bench after work and sip on a glass of wildflower, and we still find different things with every sip. And that is absolute magic. Like, you can't do that with grapes. You get a glass of a red wine or white wine. It tastes the same at the beginning as it does at the end. But if it's real, then you're getting all this melange of flavors and qualities, and the nose is special. Like right now, lilacs are in blossom, and we've planted hundreds of lilacs. So that influences our wildflower honey. The wild roses bring a lot into it. Even the pollen from spruce trees and maples, like everything adds a little something, and we don't know what it is. It's that little je ne sais quoi, that little mysterious something that makes it special.
So kind of piggybacking on what Ryan was asking here, have you noticed a particular kind of a varietal haskap kind of honey coming through when the haskaps are in bloom? You mentioned you got the bees.
Yeah. And actually, I can't say that I have. The haskaps are super early. So this year we had a warm spring, and if it's a warm spring, the honeybees are all over the haskap, and we have millions and millions of these buttery yellow flowers. But it coincides with the dandelion crop. And dandelions, they grow a little differently here on the island. There's this big flush of dandelions, and then they're gone for the rest of the year. Whereas I know, like, I grew up in Ontario, and there the dandelions seem to hang around all summer. So there's so much going on in the spring. You can't really isolate just haskap. So when you see clover honey, you know that the bees were in a field that's pretty much a monoculture of clover or alfalfa or whatever the case may be. And here the farms are small, the terrain is varied, and so it's very difficult to get what you would call a varietal honey. I've heard on the show you talk about avocado honey and different cactuses and different things like that are varietal. But here it's always a mixture of this and that.
Sure. Well, and I think a lot of varietals are, it's not necessarily purely one thing or the other, but there's a definite influence of that. I was curious.
Buckwheat's an example.
Sure. Yeah. But would you say the contribution to the haskap blossoms when you get that honey is a little more like mild, or not necessarily like particularly distinct, I guess then?
No. Our haskap influence comes from the fruit. We really don't find it in the in the honey. And here we don't harvest our honey that early in the spring. So a lot of that Haskap honey is going to be going towards feeding the brood that come of age in the spring for the big nectar flow in the summer.
I see. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but that makes sense.
Yeah. So I mean, it's it'd be interesting if we could isolate all those things, but it's pretty tricky.
Yeah.
How many hives are you running?
I'm not a big beekeeper myself. Right now, I just have 10, but I work with 2 other fellows, and together we manage about 400. And that's enough for us to do the production that we do here. We would like to, like any business, you want to grow, but at the same time, we're very picky about the honey we get. We chose to work with these other 2 fellows because they kind of had the same mindset. They keep a pretty natural style of beekeeping. And so it's very, very, clean and pure honey. And it's nice to work with those guys because too that you're supporting them and they're doing it right. They're doing it the right way. And if you can't support those guys, well, they can't do their job. So we're really lucky to have them. And here we also have a lot of wild blueberries and blueberry farms that use bees for pollination. We need more beekeepers on the island, actually. We could use more because there's not enough for all the pollination of all of the fruits that are grown here.
We talk a lot about supporting local beekeepers and the importance that they provide and that all they do. So absolutely, and you said that you moved out to the island and started a farm and you listed a couple of other jobs you've had. So hopefully other folks will think of something, think of some doing like that too, whether it's up to Prince Edward Island or somewhere where they live. I mean, maybe again, if we're talking about our other island friends, maybe it's somebody wants to do that in Hawaii, and anywhere in between. But absolutely the keeping bees and caring for the environment that way is very important. We've got my wife has some relatives in Iowa, and they have a hobby farm, and they would do rows of flowers between all of their vegetables. They have, like cucumbers and then flowers and like carrots and flowers and things like that. And the flowers were there to attract bees to help, pollinate all the vegetables. And then they just kind of fell into it. He's like, well, I got all these bees here, and started to put a couple of hives. And the University of Iowa had a program that they'd help you kind of set up some stuff. I know several universities will do that, especially the agricultural focused universities. Usually have some sort of program where they can help you do that. So he fell into it, and he's got I think he's maybe got 4 hives, something pretty small to start here. But absolutely, Jeff is now you're moving, so you get a pass. But when you get into your new place, do you plan to keep bees again?
Yeah, actually, I currently still have 2 hives in the backyard, and as a matter of fact, the city we're moving to allows bees. The guy that lives catty corner behind me has a couple of hives as well. So I'm sure we'll have stuff to talk about. I may even start keeping chickens here in our little quarter acre.
Yeah, my wife's grandfather, who lives in the city proper of St. Paul, he's had chickens for years, and the reason, he gets I don't know, maybe, a half a dozen or all half a dozen or 8 chicks in the spring, and all they do is they hop around the yard and eat the bugs, right? So it's just a natural way to keep the insect population under control. And then, as the summer goes on, they disappear, like a hawk will get one, or a fox will get one or something. And I think they're down to 2 right now. I think the last I was over there, I think I saw 2 or maybe 4. I mean, but it's I think they're going a little quick this year, so I might have to keep a closer eye on them. But no, I was even saying, that beekeeping is really surprising. I was even saying that one of the last business trips I had before COVID shut everything down was I was talking about I was in Chicago, and I visited a monastery on the south side of Chicago, and there were monks that they had 2 beehives, and they were even keeping bees there. So it's it's definitely something to get to consider and to get into. I've got on my backyard, it's called the pollinator pathway. And so the city that I live in now has a program where, you create a little pollinator path through the backyard. They're trying to get, all these backyards to do this around the property line. And then I think they subsidize some pollinator friendly plants. And there is the people who lived here before, they have, I call it cascading blooms. So basically from spring to fall, there's cascading blooms that will take place, all throughout the summer and give the bees something to do. And then I've got about 8 Russian purple sage bushes, and those things are just the bees. There's this, I mean, that looks like I don't know a good analogy, but thousands of bees are on them all day, every day. Just
it's like a swarm.
Yeah, right.
Wow,
So
that sounds really cool.
Transplanting all of those to a friend of mine who's who planted. He lives about a mile away. Planted a bunch of fruit trees, and I'm transplanting them over there to help him out, because we want to be careful with the kids, because all kids fall into it or something and startle the bees, and that wouldn't be a good situation. Okay, again, no JD to bring me back around here. Jeff, what else do you have? Any thoughts here for Charles before we start to wind down?
Let's see. So, Charles, thanks for hanging out with us. We have kept you a little longer than we intended to, but for those of our listeners hanging out at home, how can we find your meads? You mentioned they're available online by sales. How do we get a hold of those?
islandhoneywine.com, and just give us a shout. We have you can purchase online, and we've sent mead as far away. Last year we had a customer that visited the farm, and then they actually ordered a shipment of mead sent to Hawaii. It was the furthest we've ever sent mead. But yeah, we can send mead to most places, and we'd be happy to ship some mead out, and we'd love to hear your mead stories too.
Perfect.
Excellent. So you do ship, we'll just clarify, everybody, you do ship to the United States. Obviously you're in Canada, you ship to the United States, islandhoneywine.ca. Are you open for the season? Can people come visit you?
On Saturday is our first day of being open, and then we'll be open 7 days a week till Christmas. And people can come, and they can, if they want to take a tour, they can take a tour, or they can do a tasting indoors, whatever they choose. But they always have a good time, and it's fun for experienced mead drinkers and for people that have never tried it before. We'd love to meet you.
Excellent. And I see also you've got some other products that you have as well. So you've got the meads, of course. It looks like you've got some skin products, some different soaps.
Yeah,
and
that's Laura.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
And then even some mustards. Now I'm a big mustard guy. I love good mustard, and it looks like you even got some artisan. What am I trying to say here? It's artisanal. Yes, thank you. Mustards.
Yeah, we actually have some friends that also moved to the island. They're a couple from Germany, and he's a mustard master.
Mustard master.
Wow. Yeah, they take it pretty seriously. It's kind of like being a mead maker. And they have the most fantastic mustard. I never got excited about mustard. And then I tried their mustard and I just went over the moon. I said, Laura, we got to carry this. And this year they made a special Haskap mustard for us.
Oh.
And it's absolutely blow your mind. It's purple. That's the thing about Haskap. It's a natural purple. Like if you made a blueberry smoothie before, the blueberries make the smoothie gray. It's not really blue. But if you make a Haskap smoothie, the colors are really vibrant. And so they make this beautiful mustard. It tastes great. It looks amazing. It makes wonderful salad dressings. Put it on a hard-boiled egg or something. It's terrific. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. And, we have some other folks, too, like potters and artists and people in our community. And so if someone visits us here, they can really get a feel for what's going on this little island here.
Excellent. Well,
and hopefully you'll get to visit again soon.
Yes, absolutely. I hope people check you out online and come to visit you. It sounds like a wonderful way to spend a day. Charles, thank you so much for joining us, and we want to talk to you again soon.
Well, I'll tell you, it's been a real pleasure talking to you guys, and I really feel like I got to know you a little bit just listening to the podcasts, and appreciate what you're doing as well for the world of mead, because we need people like you guys to get the word out there.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right.
Good night. Well, you guys have an awesome night.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye for now.
All right. Charles Lipnicki from Island Honey Wine. Jeff, if I didn't already have my summer completely booked up, it's amazing how this happens. I mean, I was trying to find an open weekend. I think the first open weekend I found was at the end of end of July.
Right.
And, end of July. I'd love to go up there. It's beautiful, God's country up there, and nice. I imagine, based on the geography of Prince Edward Island, that it's not going to get blistering hot. Like a lot of the country has been, a lot of the United States, when I say country, has been trapped in here for the last week or so. But yeah, that I'm going to put that one on the list. It's probably a little far for JD on his trip here. He's going to get about as close as you can in the United States. He'll be up in Maine, but then, you get a little farther to go there to get through Nova Scotia, I think, before you get to Prince Edward Island.
And I tell you, it sounds like he's living his best life, man. I mean, me and Sheila have joked about, when we hit retirement age, getting a little hobby farm, raising some goats and some bees, and, just goofing off essentially. But, he's got a business out there. He's really making it work. So that sounds like his little slice of heaven, man.
Absolutely. moving on, you had an opportunity to do some educating in person,
Well,
and
not quite. We actually usually the Northeast Kansas beekeepers do their summer fun day in person, but this year, because things are still kind of iffy and they couldn't do it last year, they decided to do it by Zoom. So it was still a Zoom
well,
meeting.
people could see you. I guess in person,
Right.
meaning that they could see you. We're here. I mean, sometimes I, well, don't necessarily worry about being presentable.
Yeah, no, this is very much a t-shirt and running shorts kind of an affair on the radio.
Absolutely. Well, tell us
yeah.
about what you did.
So it was a really it kind of short, but I wanted to focus on an easily approachable recipe that beginners could do and get a pretty good result without a lot of effort, without a lot of time for aging. So, my thought here was that when you talk to people that have maybe tried mead once or twice and I don't really like mead, or people that have tried making mead once and went, oh man, you have to age it for like 3 or 4 months, and it just like it takes forever, and I could just buy some beer or some wine and blah blah blah. I thought, I should give these guys an easy, approachable session mead recipe. And I've talked before about a couple of the session meads I've made, like the lavender blossom traditional that I did, or the hibiscus and lime that I did a couple of years ago. Both of those went over really, really well. So I put together a real simple recipe for a traditional in the same style, about a pound to a pound and a half of honey with a target gravity of 1055, enough nutrient to get them to where they're going, whether they're going to ferment it indoors or on a porch on a hot day, and recommended Kveik yeast, because we've talked about how Kveik is just the easy button. It really is. It ferments good in room temperature weather. It ferments better at hot weather. So why not lean on that? And then towards the end of the recipe part, I was like, look, this is a really simple recipe. You're going to make something light, about 6% ABV, carbonated, and you're still going to retain all the floral character of your honey. You're going to get some nice esters from your yeast. But there are other ways you could, take this. You could try stabilizing and sweetening to make a sweet still mead, rather than bottle carbing it. You could oak it before you bottle carb it. You could throw like a couple pounds of strawberries or blueberries or any kind of berry, really, frozen, thawed into your fermenter in that first primary phase. Throw some spices in there. There are a handful of different things. And it got me to thinking as I was finishing up and we were talking about, some of the questions from the audience. There are a lot of fun directions we could take this that are not necessarily like, I don't want to say not beginner friendly, but not necessarily like, common or inside the box sort of things. And it kind of got me thinking to, you remember when we had Monk's Mead on last year, they had that butterscotch mead. Butterscotch in a mead. Like I've seen the candy meads people do. And I always kind of wonder, man, that's a lot of like sugar and corn syrup and stuff like that. Is that going to be a good mead? But the butterscotch just blew my mind. And I was like, well, we could get some butterscotch flavor from Amaretti. We could get some crazy flavors from Amaretti, like birthday cake, cream, or we could do wild stuff, man. And then, I happened to be watching a YouTube video for some kind of a cocktail or something, and the host went through making what she called an orgeat. I think is how you pronounce it. This I could be wrong, but it sounded really similar to what you were talking about last week with the spruce tips and like the
in the brown sugar.
Yeah. Except in this case, they're using like pulverized nuts. I think traditionally it's almonds, but she was doing it with pecans. And basically boiling those in a syrup and letting it sit for a while to kind of absorb those flavors and stuff, and then straining out the gross pulverized nuts and stuff to get something that easily mixes into a cocktail. I'm like, wow. I tried making a hazelnut mead probably a year before this show came on the air, and it ended so terribly. Like, oh my God, I'm embarrassed to talk about how badly that wound up. But that could be an approachable way to do something like that. And I got to admit, something like a pecan or a hazelnut kind of a mead for the fall, that sounds nice. And then I had a third wild idea as I was kind of just putting stuff together today. The idea of, the layered cocktails you get at bars sometimes, they have different densities, so you have different layers. Yeah. I thought about doing something in the style of a bomb pop for a 4th of July party. Where you start you start with your session mead and you break it into 3 batches. So you make a very, very sweet, something like a raspberry or blueberry, something for that blue color. Obviously, this is just for a party. We can cheat, we can add food coloring, we can do whatever we want here. You make it very, very sweet, very, very heavy, so it sits at the bottom. Then you do a lime, and that's kind of the medium sweetness, medium density. You kind of need some sugar to counteract the lime, but that's that white part in the middle of the drink. And then we'll do just a tart light cherry red to sit on top. So you can make a little bomb pop mead cocktail for our annual 4th of July party. And that sounded funny as hell.
I want to see a picture of that. I want somebody to do that and send a picture of that, because I can picture it. It looks, I'm
not sure I can pull it off. I may or may not. If anybody listening pulls this off, yes, info@themeadhouse.com. Send us a picture or find us on Facebook or Twitter, at the Mead House. We want to see this. This sounds funny. I'm probably going to try it. I'm not sure I'm going to succeed, but if anybody does succeed out there, let me know how it goes. Send us some pictures, because that's.
Yeah, we're asking a lot of Mead House Nation, and I like it. I like we're asking a lot of them. I mean, now we're asking for a layered bomb pop mead. Red, white, and blue here, layered mead. With Charles tonight is our friend of the north in Canada. So if you also wanted to do a layered red and white, or something, maybe you wanted to make a raspberry and maple. I don't know. You could, we'd also accept a picture of that. And then, last week we told everybody that we'd bust open the prize closet if they, what are we guys going to do last week, Jeff? We talked about doing something, lager, right?
Yes. The make it with a lager yeast versus a fake lager, or
a faux lager, right?
Yeah.
So we've still got I think Mead House Nation's going to come through. I think they're going to do this. I think we're going to find. I think a couple of people might already be working on the lager versus faux lager bracket. And I think this layered thing is catching up now, and it's not limited to to U.S. and Canada as well. We've got listeners from all over. We can see a lot. We can see what the IP addresses tell us. I mean, if you use a VPN and you want yourself to appear somewhere else, we're just going to assume that's we don't have the sophistication or the care to try to figure out where you really are. But
we've got data. This is a second job.
Exactly. So I mean, if you're, let's just say you're listening in Jamaica or something, and you want to do the green and yellow and red layered, go ahead. No problem. You can. we'd like to see that, or whatever you want to layer. Great stuff, Jeff. That's very interesting. I'm glad that you got to get out there. And how did people react? Are you getting any questions, or were they? What were they doing?
Yeah, there were a handful of questions. Some people, it seemed like there was a good mix of people that were kind of they had never tried making mead and they were curious about it. And there were a couple of people that had made mead and had questions about, hey, my mead has this kind of weird flavor. Is this going to get better? Am I wasting my time aging it? How can I avoid that in the future? And these are questions that you run into for people that are trying it just kind of on a whim. But yeah, no, people seem very receptive. I was kind of what they were doing. They had two different speakers at the same time, and I was also up against a doctor that was doing like hive inspections and things like that, which I imagine for the average beekeeper probably a little bit more interesting. So all the sessions were recorded though, and people that paid for attendance in one can go back and watch the videos of the other. And so I'm anticipating people are going to go back and watch and rewatch. They can, pick up the recipe, things like that. And I also had a little handout that, I'll include that with this audio file for JD so that our listeners here can see that handout too. And yeah, no, we'll, I thought it was a great talk and had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I used to get out and do a couple of the big beer fests here. Would have me do demonstrations, brewing demonstrations. So these are those events where you pay or you go in and like maybe it's at a stadium or a fairground or something, and all these the breweries are lined up and you get a tasting cup and you go around all the breweries and they would have me come and I'd brew a batch. So Andrew and I would show up and we'd brew a batch of beer and or brag it usually. And people would ask, could ask questions and things like that. And you get all kinds, right? Like people who don't, understand some of the stuff. I remember somebody walked up to me, Andrew and I are brewing. I got a 15-gallon, kettle on a like a turkey fryer kind of thing, like a portable propane thing, and I'm doing like a boil. I think I'm doing the boil or something, and he walks up and goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, we're brewing beer. It's kind of in the middle, taking a little break, but usually people gather around and I'd talk about different parts of the process, that kind of thing." And they go, "So when's it going to be ready? Like, when can we come back and taste it?" Like, yeah, this is going to be a few weeks, until it's ready. Oh, but no, get going off on that, Jeff. When I started brewing, like just started brewing, I was hanging at the homebrew shop, and at the homebrew shops here, it's kind of like those places where people congregate and talk.
Sure.
Like the barber shop or the hardware store or somewhere where people just it's also a meeting place, a hangout place.
Yeah, of course.
And this guy, I tell this guy about mead, and this guy, I said, "Yeah, I'm interested in mead. I've had some mead before. I really liked it. I'm kind of thinking about brewing some or making a batch." And the guy goes, "The thing about mead is it gets really good like on the second year of it being aged."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, every time I make a batch, I hide the bottles. I hide the bottles on the rack so I don't I can't find them on my wine rack. And then usually that second to third year, it gets really good. And I was thinking this, and it's kind of like this is a guy at a homebrew shop. This is what they're talking about. They're basically saying that it takes at least a year. You're saying it takes at least a year to be good, but after that, like second or third year, it gets really good. And obviously we're talking about, processes and procedures and, that, how, you can make really good meat really fast. But that was, and in some ways you're still fighting that. You're still fighting some of those people that, aren't really seeking meat information. They're just out there like, oh yeah, the guy at the homebrew shop says, it's gonna, I can get a great batch of beer, ready to go in 2 weeks, but it's gonna take 2 years to get a mead together. So you gotta
for at least 3 months before I even try it.
Yeah.
Any of it, and
still, they're still doing a lot of educating, I guess is what I'm saying. There's still when you're out there's a lot of educating still to do. So, all right. Anything else on that one?
No, I mean, with any luck, we're kind of leading the charge here and giving some more information out there, getting that info out there so people can kind of be informed as to, hey, lots of different ways to make mead, and this is a very different one than you've heard of before. But yeah, let's switch gears here and head up the social club.
Jeff? I got one that was sent to me. Can I jump the line here with one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here we go. This is somebody who desperately needs advice. How much jalapeno is too much jalapeno? I cored and halved a pound and a half. So he's got he cored it and cut it in two, a pound and a half. But he's thinking that's way too much for a 1 gallon. You there, Jeff?
So I'm sorry. My eyes bugged out. My lips pursed to like a what? Sorry.
So yeah. How much jalapeno is too much? I'm gonna say cord and split a pound and a half, but I'm thinking that's too much for a 1 gallon. Any suggestions appreciated?
There's a lot of different heat levels for jalapeno. They have those really, really big jalapenos like you get. I don't know if there's got to be a Jose Peppers up in Minnesota area where they do the stuffed jalapenos and they do like chicken and cheese and then they wrap the whole thing in a batter and deep fry it. There's like no spice on those at all. They taste like a slightly more piquant green pepper. And then there's some jalapenos that like, you stick a couple slices on a taco and it's like, holy shit, my mouth is on fire. And I'm the kind of guy that generally likes a little bit of heat with my Mexican food. So jalapeno can go a bunch of different ways. A pound and a half is a lot though. And even those really, really, really mild ones, that's a lot of jalapeno just pepper flavor to be overtaking a batch if you're going to let it sit on there like any appreciable time. Do you recall, this was years ago, I tried making a capsule with blackberry for, I think it was that Hoppy Halloween competition. God, this was like 3 or 4 years ago. And I used some Carolina Reaper.
Oh yeah.
My dosage rate on that was 1/2 of one pepper, cleaned and destemmed, all the little white stuff inside, all the seeds and stuff, gone. Soaked for 1 hour, and that was all the heat that needed.
Okay,
that's a lot hotter than a jalapeno, but still, man, I would be measuring your jalapeno addition in ounces instead of pounds, and probably like 1 or 2.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. The only reason that now he didn't specify this, but we're making an assumption that he wants to drink it. right?
Yes.
The only thing I would say is if you are trying to make a cooking mead, kind of like the way you make a cooking wine, which often happens by accident. You might want to go so overboard on the jalapenos that it would be undrinkable. I'm thinking, let's just say a pound and a half of jalapenos in a 1 gallon batch of mead is probably going to make it undrinkable. I mean, regardless of the heat level. I mean, a pound and a half of anything, right? I mean, a pound and a half of bell peppers is probably going to make it undrinkable. But if your goal is to make a cooking mead, like the mirepoix mead, then you absolutely. I mean, you might, if you want to use that to baste or marinate or kind of cook with in some way. It might actually work very well for that purpose and do something like that. So those are my only thoughts there on that one.
And I could see, like a cooking wine, or maybe like the liquid part of a salsa. Throw in some homegrown tomatoes and some more peppers and stuff like that into your food processor with a good glug of some very sweet, very peppery mead. So you get a little bit of sweetness with all that heat. That could be good, like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've known people that have made garlic wines, and for just to cook with. They make a gallon of garlic wine, and then they use it to cook with, and they, for whatever. I mean, I don't actually know what recipes they were doing, but they enjoyed doing it, and it worked well. Yeah, so Andrea, my wife is of Lebanese descent, and I'm of Italian descent, right? And in Italy, we a lot of the garlic is cooked in some way, sautéed or roasted or fried or whatever, right? No, in Lebanon, they might love garlic more than the Italians. They basically have a dish that is just whipped garlic, and they call it garlic. It's just whipped garlic. It's pretty much all it is, and it is they eat it. They just dip they dip some flatbread in it or put it on like tabbouleh or something, and
I think it's like garlic and egg whites, and it makes a kind of a garlicky kind of whip.
Well, so they don't. Yeah, the egg, that might be a different recipe than and very well might be an amazing recipe, but this one is just it's just garlic and oil and lemon juice just for the acidity to help it, and that's it, right? And it's just this whipped, and I say whipped, but I mean before blenders they would just mash the heck out of it.
It might have been like an American approximation of something traditional too. So,
but I eat it, and every time I eat it, no, she's the one who's got the Lebanese heritage, but I think I've grown to like some of the Lebanese food more than she does. And every time I eat the garlic, it's I always eat way too much, and I always say it's my cholesterol medicine. So I'm not, leave me alone. It's my cholesterol medicine, but I usually eat way too much. I can feel it. I sleep horribly that night because I eat way too much, and it's like it comes out of your pores for like 3 days. But damn it if it's not delicious.
That's what counts. At the end of the day,
yeah.
So
right,
there are directions.
We started this thing on a guy asking, just kind of a joke question. I mean, not, it's a real question, but it's kind of laughing about it. But on jalapenos. So, what do we have next, Jeff?
So let's jump in here. The next one is from user Beebjank. Do I need to repitch if temperature gets too low for a few days? I'm using 71B. The temperature in my house is like 55 for 2 days, and subsequently my yeast stopped fermenting because of it. Do I need to repitch, or will it start fermentation back up now that the temperature is 70?
All right. So here's kind of the reason that you keep a lot of things in the refrigerator is to kind of keep yeast or other bugs from kind of activating, right?
Mhm.
Well, let's just say you had some fresh out. You go to the site. You go to the orchard, whatever, and you get some fresh apple cider, and you put that apple cider in the fridge, and you keep it in the fridge, and it stays for the most part. It probably stays like apple cider, right? Well, take it out and it's on your counter, and you're gonna notice that fresh pressed apple cider all of a sudden is gonna start fermenting pretty good, just with the natural yeast that's in there. So no, I mean, yeast is pretty resilient. I mean, you can harvest yeast out of bottles that have been in the refrigerator. It's you do not need to repitch if it comes back up to temperature. That yeast will wake up. We talk about yeast going to sleep and waking up, and that's kind of what happens. It kind of goes to sleep. Or people buy bread yeast and they keep it in the fridge. They try to kind of things like that. But no, it might have gone to sleep or taken a little nap, but it'll wake right back up when it's about temperature. But Jeff, going from 55 to 70, he might have a different issue. What do you think about that?
Well, there could be some thermal shock there, depending on how quickly he got there. I'm not terribly worried about it, because the thing to really think about when it comes to, the, let's say, ambient temperature 55 to 70 is thermal mass. Because, let's assume he's got a gallon jug of mead sitting in a glass jug somewhere. The air temperature in your house, there's not a lot of mass that needs to be heated. It's just some gaseous particles, and those warm up really quickly. Glass, on the other hand, can be a little bit of an insulator, and that can kind of slow down the absorption of heat from the air around it. Just a little bit, not a lot, but enough. And then you've got to warm up this whole gallon of mead from 55. Let's say it's been sitting for 2 whole days, so it did finally get down to that 55 temperature, all the way up to 70. And at the end of the day, it's going to take a lot longer for that gallon of mead to warm up to 70 than it is for the ambient air temperature to reach 70. You'll reach 70 ambient air temperature in an hour or two. It could take several for the mead to get back up there. So I don't necessarily think thermal shock from that temperature difference is that big of a deal, just because it's going to be a kind of a slow climb back to 70. But it's also something to be aware of when we're talking about how long it takes for the yeast to wake back up, because it's just because it's 70 according to your thermostat does not mean it's 70 on the inside middle part of that gallon or 5 gallons or 6 gallons or whatever of must. It's going to take a while for that to warm up as well.
Very good. We might have time for one or two more, depending on how long they take.
Yeah, let's see. Next one I've got on the list is from user Several Lingonberry. JD is always talking about the crazy names from Reddit here. I like this one. It says, back sweetening without stabilizing. Hi all, Knopf's question here. I have a 3-gallon sizer batch brewed in September 2020 that just hasn't tasted right for months now. Being the novice I am, I would like to add honey, expecting it to begin fermenting again, but hoping that not everything would ferment and carry over would sweeten the batch. Just connected the dots a few weeks ago and learned about stabilizing. My question, this batch is still in the carboy and reached the yeast ABV toleration level a while back. Are there any other side effects I should expect with this batch? I'm not accidentally creating sparkling sizer here, am I? Away from the batch right now, but I can provide gravity readings later today if that helps. Thanks in advance.
Okay, so the question is, can he back sweeten without stabilizing? because he believes that the mead, the Sizer, has reached max ABV tolerance for the yeast.
But I think he has back sweetened already, and it has reached what he assumes is the max ABV. So he's wondering, essentially, it sounds like, whether or not he needs to stabilize at this point, or whether he's good.
Oh, well, there's a couple reasons that you would stabilize. Number one, I've seen some funny things happen with meads that are sitting in carboys for. I had some at Mead House at the original Mead House North. I had some stuff that was sitting in carboys for like 2 years, a couple of years, and sometimes some crazy stuff happens. All of a sudden, it just starts fermenting. It kind of like stopped, and it for whatever reason starts up. And so it is possible for that yeast to to overshoot its stated tolerance. It's possible that it could overshoot its stated tolerance at a different point. There's the and a lot of that is due to what is that called, Jeff? The STA1 gene or something. STA, you know what I'm talking about? It's basically what it is. It's a gene in certain strains of yeast that basically break, that causes it to continue fermenting. Like it will just keep going for a while. And like certain like beer brewers, some beer brewers love that because it helps create really dry beers and things that there are very positive things to it. But the problem is that, let's just say you thought that your tolerance was 16% or 14%, and then it ends up going up by 2% or something. If that's in a bottle, now that becomes a problem. It's going to sit in a carboy forever. It's an airlock. Okay, not so much, but. So stabilizing will protect you there, right? It will absolutely protect you from more spontaneous fermentation. No, I shouldn't say spontaneous fermentation, and we're not talking wild yeast here. We're just talking like spontaneously starting again, or that. The other thing is that those stabilizing it preserves flavor, so it helps. It really will help your mead taste at its peak longer. It can extend that. So I remember we were talking about the Mazer Cup this year, I think, or last year, whenever they did it, and how they, due to COVID, they had to postpone. I think they thought they were going to judge in like March, and they ended up not judging till like October or something. I mean, it was like a really long time, right? And the folks there said they had cold storage for all the bottles, and everything was properly handled, and they did a great job. I mean, I'll give those guys a lot of credit for the way they handled it. But we were talking with some folks who said, what do you think is going to benefit or not benefit from like this extra 4 or 5, 6 months of kind of sitting around? And immediately I think some of the folks who were asking that question to said, the stuff that's not stabilized, is probably going to hurt the most, because there's nothing there protecting that flavor, that they wanted to, that they had, and they sent it in. So don't be afraid of stabilizing. Don't be afraid of using sorbates or sulfites to stabilize the mead, and then protect the flavor as well a little bit. Again, you don't have to, but be careful if you don't.
Yeah, no, there is an antioxidant and protective effect of those. But the other thing to really think about when it comes to stabilizing is that the act of stabilizing, that the ABV tolerance on most yeasts, that's an average that the yeast producer came up with. And it's also a moving target. I've talked so many times before about the batch of meat that I made for my wedding, and how, in October when I bottled that, at my cheap ass was keeping my house at 68 degrees, during the mid to late fall. The alcohol tolerance was one level. A year and a half later, in the middle of June, when I was, again, being cheap, keeping the house probably like 74, 76, much different alcohol tolerance. And we blew some corks out of those bottles.
Yeah.
So stabilizing will prevent that. And it's not going to leave to any surprises, not going to lead to any bottle bombs, and just a safer experience for everybody involved, man.
Absolutely. All right. Do we have a short one, a quick one maybe we can get to?
Let's take a scan here. This is from user Too Many Owls. He says, I have 4 berry melomels that I have added bentonite to during primary. It's been in secondary for a couple of months, and I'm considering using another finding agent. Is there anything I should know? Can I just add more bentonite?
Yes. All right. Good night. No. The bentonite, the way that I've always, here's the thing. I would take a page out of the wine kits that you can buy at the homebrew store for this one, because they tell you use bentonite up front, it's like you did, but then on the back end they recommend using a 2-stage. That you can do the 2-step, clarifier, that you can do that helps knock it out. So I would do that. I would probably use a different one, something like that. Now, there's lots of those ways. You can use gelatin. You can use egg whites if you really want to. I've seen, all the old school stuff. Or you can just go and get one of those 2-step clarifiers and do that. Drop those in. That's the way I do it. Those wine kits are designed to produce a really good product. A good looking product for people, and be easy to do. And that's what they tell you to do. Bentonite up front, 2-step on the back. And there's no reason to break that path. Yeah. If JD was here, he'd cut me off. But it sometimes, Jeff, you're an educated guy, and sometimes there's people they misquote things all the time, or they don't understand the they use a saying and like the opposite of what it means.
Right.
So you remember the poem A Road Less Traveled? And
yes.
And it's like on every motivational poster. You see memes about it, like I took the road less traveled. You see like a fork in the road, like in a meme, and there'll be like the beaten path, and there'll be like an overgrown, like lightly treaded path, and somebody goes that way. And they, I took the road less traveled. And they make that like a point of like a medal that they should wear, right? If you've ever read the poem or understand it, probably read it in high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not what the poem means.
Right.
It doesn't mean like, that take the road less traveled, and don't be like the it crowd. It basically it means that don't worry about the path you didn't take. Because most roads are going to end up in the same place anyway, and so you pick one. You don't worry about the one you didn't do.
Right.
So kind of with this is what I'm, okay. So I was going to go 2 directions. So number one, just pick something and do it. Don't worry about it. If you want to use Haskap berries, just, and currants, fine, do it. Don't worry about it. but the other one is people now I'll say how people think they use that quote, and they always say, "Oh, I used the road less traveled. I didn't do what the crowd did." Okay, if a crowd is doing something, or a company in this case is doing something, a big company is doing something, it usually because it works, and you don't need to try to beat the market, so to speak. If every single wine kit company out there is saying, by the way, use BetNet up front and the two-step in the back, you don't need to try to find a different way to do it. You can just do that.
Right.
Or the second,
it works really well. Just do that.
Yes. Now with what the poem actually means is, but if you decided to use gelatin, then just use gelatin and don't worry about it. Because I've used gelatin as a clarifier. It's literally went to the grocery store, bought Knox gelatin, and dropped it in, the carboy, and got crystal clear mead. So like I said, for now we'll tie it back together with the original meaning of the poem. Pick a step. Don't worry about the step you didn't take, because most roads are going to lead to the same place anyway.
Yeah. The only thing I will add to that, you're 100% right on the money. If you pick your step and it isn't working, you pick gelatin or you pick the two-step or whatever, and it doesn't clear the way you want it to clear, this is a berry mead. Did you add pectinase? Did you add enough pectinase? You might add more pectinase. You might be surprised. That might help.
Absolutely. Excellent. All right, we gotta call it there. I don't know if the old man's gonna be around next week or not, but we better knock off a few things off his list before he gets home.
Yeah, no kidding. We better get to it. So, hey, before we take off here, let's give a big thanks to Charles Lipnicki from I'm going to edit this out later. Let me just try this again. Hey, before we take off here, let's give a big thanks to Charles Lipnicki from the Island Honey Wine Company for spending some time with us, and let us know what you're brewing. You can email us at info@themeadhouse.com or send us a message on Facebook or Twitter, both at The Mead House. So in the meantime, happy mead making, and that's it for this episode. Ryan, grab the lights on the way out. I'm going to put the chairs up here, and we'll be back next week with episode 202 of The Mead House. Good night, everybody.